Greetings and salutations, and a thank you, by the way, to listener and viewer JR of Avon, who sent me this.
Look at that beautiful thing.
Fabulous sweatshirt. That I think it was difficult for him to part with, but he said he outgrew it, and he said, I want you to have it, and so here I am donning exactly that, this vintage, fabulous McGregor, by the way. What are you doing?
You have to make sure, like, the mic is within the vicinity of where you're speaking out of your mouth, generally.
Wait, what way were you just facing right there as you were saying that?
I'm just saying.
Okay,
like,
where's the mic in
you have to
comparison to
make
where you're
sure
talking? You're talking straight on like
okay.
I was.
Do we need to start again? Do we need to do the 3, 2, 1 and start
this
again?
way? Here we go. Okay,
I'm just
there
saying,
we go.
like,
How's that?
Hi,
Is that better?
everybody, and welcome to Aquarian Schultz.
Well,
I'm Derek
you want to look at the camera. I'm not the one that sets the microphone. Is it in my job description to set the microphones up?
I set the thermostat for you already. I can't do everything.
Right.
I can't,
Well,
you know.
Can you
can't
talk
hold
into
your
the mic,
hand
please?
through the whole thing. That's what I'm doing.
You're
right
looking
now.
straight ahead and you're talking across the mic. You need to talk.
Just forget
into the
that I
mic.
said anything. What's
They're supposed to be all directional mics, right?
every time that we're about to do a show, I wake up and I say, today's going to be a good day. This is going to be a good show. Mm-hmm. And almost immediately after the show starts, I realize that today is not going to be a good day, and this is not going to be a good show.
Did you wake up Ernie while you stole Bert's sweater?
Here we go. This actually
Okay.
matches my kicks. You like that? It's essentially like my Purdue outfit. I didn't have any Purdue gear.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So now that you're a Purdue employee,
They signed my checks.
you look like Purdue Pete.
Let's not go there. Let's not go there with it. We got a lot to get to today.
Derek, ding dong, the season's over, right?
Thank goodness.
Hallelujah.
Thank goodness.
The nightmare that is the 2023 Colts season or 2022 Colts season has come to an end, and it could not have been a bigger disaster.
Yeah, look, we're not going to get into any of the stats from yesterday, like Sam Ehlinger did blah, 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 or
Who cares,
Zach
right?
Moss did blah, blah, blah. Who cares? The only thing that I want to say about yesterday's game was, and I don't mean to be mean about this, right? No one takes enjoyment in the Colts getting embarrassed. But there was something just kind of like dark comedy, hilarious, am I right, about that final drive where Houston completes a 4th and 12 and then a 4th and 20. I mean, a pass that I could have picked off ends up being a touchdown, and then it felt like the 2-point conversion at that point was I would have absolutely picked that off. First off, we've talked about this before. I can't get as high as Rodney Thomas can. I can stay in the air longer. We've talked about, like, when I get off a diving board, like, I'm not a high jumper, but I can remain airborne. I have a gift of hang time. So I would have hung around there and been able to pick that pass off. But regardless, the 2-point conversion felt like a fait accompli. Like, you knew once that happened, they were losing that game.
Right.
And you know what, Jake? Honestly, I feel maybe guilty for saying this. Part of me was happy that that's how it ended because I didn't want the Colts to come out and sell to us that game meant something. Hey, we fought back. We came back and see these guys kept believing and we worked hard all the way. You know that's what they were going to sell.
You know what's even worse
than
than that? Derek, there's only one thing worse than that. And by the way, thank you as always to Bailey & Wood for being the presenting sponsor of this program. And we are inside the Lou Malnati's studio. Lou Malnati's, again, various Central Indiana locations. Mm-hmm. The best one if you want to dine in cozy, get a draft beer, or for the kids a soft drink and Chicago-style pizza, along with a wide array of menu, all available in Broderpool on Ferguson, right up against the canal. So thank you to Lou Malnati's as well. The worst thing than what you're talking about, Derek, is the Colts tried to win that game.
Yeah.
And got beat by the Houston Texans.
Yeah.
The Colts went out and tried to win the game. You play to win the game. The Colts tried to win the game against a team in the Houston Texans who had, 2 wins?
Yeah.
Coming into it?
Mm-hmm.
And a tie?
Mm-hmm. Against the Colts.
And the rest, all losses. The Texans were so bad that they fired Lovie Smith before, daybreak this morning on a Monday and did so by saying, Lovie, we appreciate your efforts, but you were so bad that you almost lost to the Indianapolis Colts, who were trying to win the game. The Colts were trying to beat the Houston Texans and could not even do that. And I know that Jonathan Taylor's hurt. I know that Shaquille Leonard's hurt. But they were going with the quarterback that in the middle of the year, Jim Irsay jerked the wheel and said, this is the guy that is going to help us win games. They were being coached by a guy who said, I'm here to win games. And they finished with how many straight losses?
They finished as the worst team in the NFL.
Correct.
You can say definitively, I know what the record says. I know the Bears are going to pick one. By the end of the year, so on January 8th, the Indianapolis Colts were the worst team in the NFL. Period. They would not have been if they played the Bears tomorrow, they wouldn't be favored in that game.
Derek,
right? They wouldn't be favored against Arizona.
This is the reality of professional sports. You are as good as your current situation or record. And for the Indianapolis Colts, and this was not the case a year ago, and it probably won't be the case a year from now. As of right now, the Colts are coached by a failure, and they are put together by a failure. Chris Ballard is a failure as an executive. Jeff Saturday is a failure, who I love, by the way. Love Jeff Saturday. As a coach, he's a failure because he said he wanted to win, and it didn't happen. And I'm sorry, I'm not saying they don't have individual talent at positions, but in terms of meshing it together as a unit, they are a disaster. Mm-hmm. That is a bad football team with no direction and no light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah.
I wish I could say it differently.
It was a bad football team when Saturday took over, but it got demonstrably worse. I mean, they were outscored
Correct.
by 87 points in his 8 games. And I'm going back and forth on Twitter where a lot of people are like, well, what did you expect? Well, I didn't expect them to get run off the field in half their games and lose to the Texans. I mean, that's not what I expected. That's not what the owner expected. So I think while you're talking about failure, another failure is Jim Irsay trying to be smartest guy in the room and go outside the box with the Saturday hire and have it blow up in his face. You know, didn't we go after Joe Thomas and Bill Cowher and all those people? Look, there was a lot of hyperbole when Saturday got hired, right? No one – it was like Irsay had ran over their dog. It was a little bit ridiculous. But ultimately, those critics were exactly right. They were right that this was a joke. We said it. We reacted live on the air, and I hated saying it because I love Jeff Saturday too. What was our reaction? This is ridiculous. Like Rake told us during the commercial break, and I said straight out, it is absurd that Jeff Saturday is going to be the head coach of an NFL
Derek,
team.
You said, and I want to be clear. I mean, I love Jeff Saturday as a guy. His knowledge of the game is beyond mine. I get all that. But when he was hired as the head coach, if you recall, Derek, you said to me, oh, the Colts just hired their interim coach. And we were sitting here talking about Bubba Ventrone. And I said, okay. And you said, it's a former player. I guessed Reggie Wayne. I guessed Cato June. I guessed David Thornton.
I think you guessed Mathis at one point too, didn't you?
I didn't guess Mathis.
Okay.
I said
maybe
David
Thornton was the one.
And then you said, I'll just tell you, it's Jeff Saturday. Oh, okay. It was that outside the box.
Yeah.
And I think Jeff and Jim Irsay, and I think I'm alone in this thought, but I really believe that Jim Irsay thought that he was going to get up the next day and read the headlines and it was going to be nothing but, this is why Irsay is a football genius. He thought outside the box, and why did nobody else think of that? What a brilliant hire. And instead, virtually everyone involved with the NFL from a coaching or former coaches or executives standpoint said, this is like absurd.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to cause him to double down.
At this point, I hate speaking definitively, Jake, especially when it's Irsay, who's the ultimate wild card here. You can't sell this. You can't. There's not a single Colts fan on the planet that wants Jeff Saturday back as a head coach. Not one. You can't possibly sell this.
But he's going to try. That's a safety school.
He can try if he wants to.
But Derek,
you can't sell this. You can't sell retaining Jeff Saturday as head coach after what it was a disaster, debacle, whatever you want to use. It was awful. I mean, they really, outside of a late score against the Raiders, they should have lost all of those games. Right. You could say here, well, we were really close. You know, no, you weren't. You went 33-0 in the fourth quarter to Dallas. You got outscored 39-3.5 to Minnesota, and those were the close games, the competitive games. Well, you were close to beating the Texans at home. Great. 14 other teams beat the Texans. You didn't. You had 2 bites at the apple and you didn't beat them. They weren't close. I mean, they were close to being the worst team in NFL history. I mean, I guess they were close to that, but they weren't close to being like a competitive, good football team this year.
Where do you think it all went wrong?
I don't know, because it's hard to pinpoint one thing, Jake. You know, we need a fall guy all the time. I don't have a fall guy for you. I think it was a combination of some individual player regression, notably on the offensive line. Obviously, with Ryan, he was not up to snuff as well. And then I think in the middle of the season, if there was a chance to steady the ship and rally the troops and get things going, Irsay nuked that with the ridiculous Ellinger decision with a 3-3-1 record. I know the Colts weren't as good as that 3-3-1 record, but still, they were 3-3-1. They were right there. And you bring in somebody that clearly is not an NFL starter. And then 2 weeks later, you brought in a guy that was completely out of his realm and not qualified to be an NFL head coach. So you made a not-so-great situation even worse. So the Colts were going like this the first couple of weeks, and maybe they keep heading like this. But the second that the quarterback changes started happening and Saturday was hired, you went off the cliff.
Right.
Gone. Just off the map completely. You were the yodeler in Price is Right. You love that comparison where you just drop. That's it.
Lady,
Game's over.
Lady,
Drew Carey
lady,
sends you back to whatever. You got to wait by the big wheel to spin. Gone.
Cliffhanger.
Yeah, whatever it was.
Yeah.
It's not called Yodel Man? I thought it was just called Yodel Man.
Cliffhanger.
Okay. You know the game shows better than I do, admittedly.
Great game. It's probably the best game.
I mean, what do you think? Am I right in saying that? Is that a fair diagnosis of where things went wrong for the Colts?
I think where things went wrong is that the way they have been assembled. And I'm not saying that I don't get it, but I will say what I've said 100 times. As a general manager in the National Football League, your clock truly begins when you draft your franchise quarterback. And Chris Ballard has avoided that forever, and give him credit. Man, that guy is, I'll tell you something, he's dumb like a fox because he just keeps buying himself another year and buying himself another year and buying himself another year by, hey, next year we can't judge everything just yet because we don't have our quarterback. So just wait till we do. But we got a guy that we're going to bring in, and he's going to keep the ship going while we put some pieces around it. And then a year later. So this year – no. Next year. But we got another guy. We get Phillip left, and we got another guy now, and he's going to be good. Okay, he didn't go very well with that. We understand it didn't go well with Carson. We listened to the coach. We thought, but so you're going to no. Next year we will. But this year we got a guy coming in, and so back to now it gets real, right? Mm-hmm. I know that Chris Ballard has avoided. Now it gets real because he's going to have to draft a quarterback this year. Because I'm telling you right now, if he doesn't, they have the 4th pick in the draft. If he doesn't draft and the Colts don't draft a quarterback this year, then I think everybody should just march down Capitol and just dump all their stuff.
Won't allow it. Yeah, this is 100% the owner's call, don't you think?
I would think.
Yeah, this is the owner's call here. He's already inserted himself into these other decisions. I think this is going to be his call. And that's what again, Jake, we've got months to talk about Stroud and Levis and Richard and all these guys, right? And we have months to discuss these offseason moves.
Can I just say this also? So I'm saying all that, and maybe I'm going to contradict myself, and I'm going to be a hypocrite here. But the worst thing to happen to football in the last 5 years is all of these websites with all 22 film and these nonstop draft board experts and analysis, because now every fan out there is literally every fan all of a sudden is the next coming of Bill Polian. I mean, 4 people already today have texted me, I'm just not really high on this year's quarterback draft. I don't think that there's the guy there. Okay. I mean, all of a sudden everybody's a combine warrior.
Don't worry, man. We'll have plenty of time to talk about.
I don't want to talk about
Bryce Young's arm talent.
Yeah,
we'll have plenty of time to discuss all of that. I know you're excited.
I've watched the tape, and I didn't like the way he moved his foot rotation against Texas A&M.
But what I worry about, just kind of with where the franchise sits today, is this just going to be all Jim Irsay all the time now? And are you only bringing Ballard back as general manager in title only? and you've got the puppet master behind him that is making all the decisions. Because I'm telling you, Jake, I am confident that the Colts can bounce back. It is not hard to bounce back. Look at the Jaguars. Go worst to first. It is not hard to do that in the NFL.
Their schedule next year, very favorable.
But if Irsay steps in and puts his fingerprints on all of this, I am not confident that they're going to ever be able to do that. I think Colts fans feel like, well, things can't possibly get worse. Oh, they can get way worse. They can get way worse. Like, this team has never really had sustained down. Every time they've been down, they've gone right back up.
Well, pre-1998.
Oh, well, yeah.
But since 1998, you're
this
correct.
Century. When they've had down seasons, they've kind of immediately bounced back. And I think there is the ability for them to do that. But they need the owner to, if he doesn't trust Chris Ballard to make decisions, then he's got to go. You have to bring in a head coach and a general manager who aren't going to be your puppets.
What if he trusts Chris Ballard to allow him to make decisions?
He's trusting Chris to trust him?
What if Jim Irsay, what if the thing that Jim Irsay most trusts about Chris Ballard is that Chris Ballard allows Jim Irsay to make decisions?
Yeah, I mean, that could be part of it too. But again, when the Colts have been at their best, it's when Irsay hasn't been. Of course, you're the owner. You have to give your stamp of approval, right? So Irsay is always going to be involved in the decision-making. But I'm talking sole decision-maker. Jeff Saturday was solely Jim Irsay. Going back to Sam Ehlinger was solely Jim Irsay. That wasn't Ballard. That wasn't Reich. That wasn't anybody else. You need to have a balance there, and that's when the Colts have been at their best. When they've been at their worst, it's when solely it's been Jim Irsay pulling the trigger on things. When he's delegated to Tobin, Polian, whoever else, even Grigson, the Colts have found success.
No. What do you mean, even Grigson? You said that like.
Well, I mean, it wasn't exactly like the gold standard of a Colts era, but yeah, I mean, he at least allowed seemingly Ryan Grigson to make trades.
I used
and
to have
signings
a decent relationship with Ryan Grigson until he thought that I was telling you stuff. You napalmed the whole thing.
Are you serious?
Yeah. Yep.
What would I have aired out that he
I
told
can't remember, but there was something you said to his agent, and they were like, well, how would you know that? And I think you said, like, well, Jake told me. And so Grigson sent me a message and said, that's it.
I told him that when I needed to reach out to Buddy about a Matt Painter thing that I was working on, and I told him that you and I wanted to have go to KSR with you and Grigson. And maybe that's why he was like, wait a minute. That's seemingly harmless. That's not like insider trading info.
Well,
We're talking about wings and blue
all
cheese.
I can tell you is Grigson sent me a thing and said, that's it. It's over. You mentioned to Derek that we talk. It's over.
You don't tell me anything anyway. You don't tell me anything.
Just telling you.
And I guard against the things that I know because I have sources. I eat wings with important people, too.
I wanted insider Vikings information, and I can't get it now.
That's a bummer.
Because of you.
Let's get to our Lou Malnati's Who's Cooking segment.
The sweatshirt is beautiful.
We're always positive about Lou Malnati's pies. Absolutely
Pizzas,
delicious. Yep, their pies are great. You can go to any of their Central Indiana locations. Avon,
it's
Carmel,
almost like cake.
Greenwood.
Thick.
Cake? I wouldn't compare it to cake.
Everybody loves cake. Not everybody likes pie. Everybody loves cake.
Up by Brebeuf, so West 86th Street, and then their dine-in location in Broad Ripple. Order.loumalnatis.com. As they continue with us here in 2023, it's been such a great partnership. We appreciate everybody over there.
Very much so.
For being totally awesome. And sticking with us through what was a disastrous Colts season, unfortunately. I did mention Zach Moss and about how we weren't going to talk about Zach Moss, but now we're going to talk about Zach Moss because he had a career-high 118 yards.
Ran hard.
He had one of the offensive highlights, I think, of the year. Now, some of that was poor tackling from a terrible Houston team, but still, that touchdown run and just everything that he's done, I think he has solidified himself as the RB2 of the future.
Could he be, Derek? And I agree. In terms of our Who's Cooking, Lou Malnati's Who's Cooking, Zach Moss, not even by default necessarily because there weren't a lot of offensive stars in the game against Houston, but I thought he came on once his number was called. And when you look at the roster moving forward, Jonathan Taylor is an elite-level talent. There's no doubt he's a home run hitter. But I keep saying this. If you can get 80% his production by moving him elsewhere and taking pieces in and avoiding paying him a second contract, I think you got to take a look at it.
Yeah.
I really do. Because Moss is also a between-the-tackles runner that can get you yards and keep the chains moving. He doesn't have the home run ability, perhaps, as Jonathan Taylor, but on an everyday rotation or an every down rotation as a back, third down back, etc., you get decent production out of him. And you could do so by sparing yourself a lot of money you're going to have to pay Jonathan
It's great
Taylor.
to have Jonathan Taylor. You don't need Jonathan Taylor. You don't need it. Look at the Titans with Derrick Henry. It's great to have Derrick Henry. You can't just win with that. Your quarterback situation has to be
You're right.
competent to very good in order to win, period. And so of the many interesting decisions that the Colts have to make, I'm very much fascinated with that 2020 draft class because not only Taylor, but are you going to have to give Michael Pittman elite money when I'm real skeptical? I think Michael Pittman Jr. is a nice player, and I think he's going to be a very productive NFL
Bobby
player.
Okereke?
I do not think he's a game breaker. And then, of course, this offseason, see, those guys are at least still under contract for 2023.
But Okereke's a free agent,
yeah,
right?
but generally you start talking about extensions with those players beforehand.
Look at that. Zaire Franklin, single season.
What a year for him. Yeah.
He's Gary Brackett reincarnated, right?
Him and Paris Campbell had a really nice
kudos
year.
to Paris Campbell.
And they're good dudes. You know, like that's kind of what stinks about this whole thing, Jake, is that I like a lot of the players and what they're about.
Sure.
And what they rep and their backstories for this Colts team. But it did not go well this year. And I can't sit here and do smiles and rainbows and gumdrops and pretend like
What was that?
things are going to be absolutely fine because I don't know that.
What was that you just did?
Smiles.
Okay.
For the shoe. Just give Chris Ballard time to pick a quarterback. Jeff Saturday got meaningful experience this year, so he'll be great next year. Like all that is nonsense. It's garbage. Like throw it right out.
Okay.
Yeah.
You seem very sarcastic.
Being the worst team in the NFL lends some sarcasm and snark. It just does.
Who had the second best record in the AFC South? Within the division. Who had the second best divisional record?
Was it Houston? Because they beat Jacksonville and Tennessee.
It was.
And the Colts. So they were 3-2-1, right?
Correct.
Houston.
So Jacksonville had the
it's
best
great.
record in the division. Houston was second.
Yeah.
Tennessee
amazing.
third and the Colts fourth.
That's incredible. Wow. And the whole stat about I guess people don't always realize what you know. I don't think people realize that every other team had won multiple times since the Colts last won one. And it's not hard to win this division, yet the Colts seemingly make it very hard. We'll talk more NFL. We got a college hoops wrap as well. Some good and some bad.
We have a wrap?
From the week that was. No,
Are you
like
gonna
a
beatbox?
wrap up. We could do that. Oh, Vince is already running the bug. It's Corey and Schultz, ISC Sports Network. Stick around. Bye.
Hey, AC!
Nice snap.
Mortgage is a snap! Duh!
Bailey and Wood, a lending hand for Wish TV Sports.
Other universities didn't fit into my life.
They said I'd have to quit my job to go to school.
They said it would take me 4 years to graduate. They said I have to take tests when they tell me to.
They said my degree would cost a fortune
But I didn't have to listen to them.
because I have a university that listens to me.
Tests on your time, courses on your time, graduate on your time. WGU, the University of You.
Hey, AC!
Nice snap.
Mortgage is a snap! Duh!
Bailey and Wood, a lending hand for Wish TV Sports.
Alongside Jay Query, I'm Derek Schultz. Thanks so much for joining us. We waved at the same time. That was cute. BAWFG.com, 855
FG,
350-HOME if you're looking to refinance or perhaps you are looking to get pre-approved for a mortgage. Housing market actually is kind of tilting back towards the buyers now after being a seller's market there for a while. So if you're in the market for a home, have Mike Wood and his 5-star customer service team.
Mike thrilled because
help
the
you out.
Dolphins into the playoffs?
Yeah, how about that? Aren't you bummed that the Lions aren't going?
Yeah.
I'm bummed.
I love Dave Campbell, though. This is what I love about Dave Campbell.
Dan?
or Dan Campbell, excuse me, who was kind of mocked, right, when he became the head coach.
Like meathead guy.
Yeah. But I loved, and I'm sure everybody knows this by now, but for Detroit to get into the playoffs heading into the final week, they needed Seattle to lose to the Rams and then to beat the Packers. Obviously, Seattle and the Rams goes into overtime. Seattle wins. That eliminates Detroit before they even take the field. Did you see Melissa Stark's interview with Dan Campbell?
No.
So after the game began, they did one of those coach sideline interviews like after the first quarter. And Melissa Stark says, Coach, you knew coming into the game now that the playoffs were not in reach for you and that you were eliminated. So how did you get up for this game? And he said, we knew we weren't going to the playoffs, but we knew that we can keep these guys from going. So that's what we're all in on. We're going to bounce Green Bay right out of the picture.
Love it.
And that's exactly what they did.
Love it. Can I say something? This has absolutely kind of nothing to do with today's show or anything like that. You know, Peyton Manning spent a large part of his career and really even post-career getting derided for his failure in big games. Has there been a team or a quarterback, and I hate to hang it all on Aaron Rodgers, it feels like every year the Packers blow a game like that. Like the Packers, to me, if you're making a list of all the times they were at home and got embarrassed or lost or in overtime in heartbreaking fashion or whatever else, like that's a franchise that has flopped seemingly every year for like 12 straight years.
Here's what I said earlier this morning about Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers is a phenomenal talent. Great player. Fun to watch, too. I mean, his ability to throw in a laser and rolling out, and he's mobile. And
he's one of the 10 best quarterbacks ever play.
Smart quarterback. But there's always drama around him in some way, shape, or form. He's been engaged numerous times, and then it gets called off at the last minute. That's his right. It has nothing to do with his football career, I realize. He is estranged from his family, and he doesn't talk to his brother, and there's drama around that. That's his right. Doesn't affect his football career. I get it. He, held out in this weird thing with the Packers where he had a year left on his contract, and, the holding point of the NFL in the offseason was what's Aaron Rodgers going to do? I don't know. He's under contract.
Yeah,
and then he comes back like a hero. I'm going to re-sign for even more time and stay in Green Bay and da-da-da. He's a wonderful talent who's had a great career. But at this point, the drama around him and the constant, just melodramatic stuff around him is now superseding his on-field production. And for that reason, if I was a Green Bay fan, I'd be thrilled if the guy just decided to retire.
Yeah, he might have thrown his last pass as a Packer, maybe. There's always going to be a taker.
He's probably going to come here.
It's a quarterback market. There's always going to be one. Let's get to our Love That Play on a happy note, and you came in here and said it right away. I think this is the most obvious
biggest
thing
no-brainer
ever.
of all time.
Sports are great sometimes because there are things that happen, and you want to think that the big man upstairs probably has bigger things to worry about than a kickoff return in a Bills-Patriots game. But it's just cool when things like that happen, and you feel like, oh, my God, there's some, divine intervention that is involved here. It was hard not to think that when, after the week that Buffalo had, for Nyheim Hines to just take the opening kickoff and just blast off all the way to the house, it was a great moment. I mean, you saw Josh Allen get emotional after the game and talking about it, and then, of course, Hines did it again with a 101-yard run back. It's special. It's memorable. And sports gives us those moments time and time again.
Right. No, I'd agree with that. Love That Play, by the way, brought to you by the good guys at Love Heating and Air, and gals as well. Love Heating and Air Conditioning has been around for over 100 years in Central Indiana. Love-HVAC.com is their website. Their telephone number is 317-353-2141. Here's another example of something I love about Love Heating and Air. Had a family member that said, oh, man, my furnace is going out, when it was subarctic outside. Really, I'm in some deep trouble here. And I said, well, call up Love Heating and Air, have them come out. He called me back. He said, Jake, you're not going to believe this. Turns out I don't need a new furnace after all. It was actually just this little repair here, but I could use a humidifier, so they're going to put that in. But they were honest enough to come out and say, hey, you know what? Don't get a hold of the unit
they're going
yet.
to shoot you straight.
Right. They're going to shoot you straight and do it with integrity, great knowledge of product, 24-hour on-call maintenance. That's what you get from Love Heating and Air Conditioning, love-hvac.com. The Hamlin story was a great one, and, obviously it has a happy ending. We have no idea what, physically speaking, he's going to be able to do moving forward. But obviously, neurologically speaking, going to be recovered. And
yeah, I mean, first off, you're happy that he's alive.
That's what I mean.
And you're right, we don't know, but from knowing what I know about heart things, somebody that was way older and in far worse shape ended up being just fine when he went through a heart issue. So I'm hoping the same for DeMar Hamlin.
Do you know one thing, Derek? Two things I want to touch on real quick, because this is the first time we've talked since that all happened. I did not know this, and I'm a little embarrassed to say I didn't know this. Do you know the difference between a heart attack and cardiac arrest?
Heart attack is a blockage where the blood can't get in and out, right? And a cardiac arrest is just your heart stops beating.
Correct.
Yeah.
I always just thought cardiac arrest means heart attack.
Yeah.
Cardiac arrest means that your heart, in fact, yes, you are correct, ceases operation. In the case of Hamlin, I reached out to Dr. Mottman when that all happened and said, what do you think's happening here? And he said, well, Jake, what you got to understand is if he is unconscious at the moment, if they got a heart rate back, then Mottman explained it to me. He said, we intentionally put somebody medically sedated and lower the temperature to alleviate the stress on all of the organs, to then kind of just be able to assess through a battery of tests the different areas of the body to find out what was damaged and what wasn't. And he said, and I'll give Dr. Mottman credit because he was right on this. He said, it's going to be somewhere between the 48 and 72-hour window when they will begin lowering the amount of sedation, which will wake him up, and the time in which he wakes up, or the amount of time it takes for him to come out of the intentional medical, I hate to say coma, but medical sedation is going to be dependent upon how healthy his body is. And so he said, it's not like all of a sudden he was in a coma and just woke up like you see in the movies and was like, wow. It was by design and intention when they were waking him up. But it was exactly as he said it would be, and that neurologically speaking would be the first thing that they were able to assess. And obviously, when he was able to be coherent, when he came out, they knew that he was going to be okay. This probably doesn't need to be said, but I don't know why I feel somewhat compelled to say it. I've seen a lot of people say that this shows the power of prayer because the entire nation was praying for DeMar Hamlin, and I understand that, and I know that there is a lot of power and truth to that, and there's a lot of power and good that comes from people having a spiritual thing with which for hope, right? And I get that. I don't diminish any of that. The only thing about it that makes me uncomfortable sometimes is, I said, Derek, when I had a heart attack and was able to come out of that room, there are a lot of people that did not make it out. And I don't pretend by any stretch of the imagination that I survived that or DeMar Hamlin survived that and other people didn't because those people didn't have people praying for them. You know what I mean?
I hear you, yeah.
There's a lot that goes into it. I'm extremely grateful for him and for the fans of Buffalo and people in general. That story was a wonderful story that gave hope to the power of belief, and that's a wonderful thing. But I don't want it to be then seen by people as for those that were not as lucky as myself or DeMar Hamlin, that they didn't have the same amount of love around them.
And belief and faith are important. They're tenets of life, right? But what's also important are doctors and trainers and these medical professionals. I mean, you saw it with Dr. Mottman. These people are incredible. Like, we use the term genius around, but these doctors in Cincinnati and these NFL trainers running on the field and administering CPR and knowing exactly what to do at the exact moment with no time to hesitate at all. It's incredible. They saved his life.
Mottman once, who, by the way, is the cardiological interventionist at the Community Heart and Vascular Hospital on the Northeast Side and the one that worked on me. I remember asking him once something about my heart, and I said, Mottman, can you just explain this to me like I'm a third grader? So he goes into this long dissertation, and I said, that's all cool. But I said like I'm a third grader. And he said, oh, that was. Okay. Yeah. There's a slight difference in intellect here, right?
A little bit. Tiny bit. Yeah. You know what? Let's go ahead and break. I think that's a good stopping point to go to basketball and transition to the next thing.
Sounds
so
good.
we'll squeeze the Pacers and college hoops into the same segment when we come back. Kind of like Jake is squeezing into that 2XL sweatshirt there. Corey and Schultz.
Saying I'm fat now?
ISC
Thanks.
Sports Network.
Hey, I'm Jeff Saturday, and my favorite thing when I was a professional football player was Indiana. The Hoosier State always made me feel like family. That's why I trust Indiana's hometown mortgage lender, Bailey & Wood. This family-owned company not only gives back to the communities they serve, but also with their 5-star customer service, they can close on your dream home in days, not weeks. So remember, Indiana, you can always get your mortgages at a snap with Bailey & Wood.
Hey, Jeff, how does this look? Yay!
Not bad, bud, but let's stick to mortgages.
Other universities didn't fit into my life.
They said I'd have to quit my job to go to school.
They said it would take me 4 years to graduate. They said I have to take tests when they tell me to.
They said my degree would cost a fortune.
But I didn't have to listen to them.
Because I have a university that listens to me.
Tests on your time, courses on your time, graduate on your time. WGU, the University of You.
Welcome back to Query and Schultz. We're inside the Illuminati studio. The show, of course, presented by Bailey & Wood. Before we get to the NBA, real quick, Derek, at the time that we are taping this just coming out, another domino falls in the NFL coaching circles. Cliff Kingsbury out as the head coach of the Arizona Cardinals. That could potentially be very significant to the Indianapolis Colts, but not for the reason you think. Not because I think Cliff Kingsbury could end up coaching the Colts. I'm not saying that. Arizona drafts one spot in front of the Colts. They have Kyler Murray as their quarterback. Kyler Murray was very closely linked with Cliff Kingsbury. With Kingsbury out, it makes you wonder if Arizona doesn't go in a totally different direction, and if, in fact, and a quarterback that seemingly has 3 and maybe 4, or a draft that has 3 and maybe 4 quarterbacks, if the Colts are going to be now drafting behind another team that is quarterback thirsty, then that makes you wonder what happens for the
Anything
Colts.
is possible. I would still throw that in the very unlikely bin because of the contract extension they just gave Murray.
Fair.
And then he got hurt. So what are you going to do? You gave him that huge extension, and then after 8 games or however many he played this year, you're like, nah, you know what? You're not our guy anymore.
Well, unless they bring in, all
sure,
new staff that
like I
says,
said,
let's turn him into picks.
Anything is possible, but I think the real
Kyler Murray,
the real
quarterback
threat
of the
for
Colts in 2024 for just 1 year, and then after that, it's on to Derek Carr.
The real threat for the Colts is Chicago. And I think if the Colts really want to get their guy, then they're just going to have to call the Bears, and given Bauer's relationship and all of that and the connections there, that's the trade that you're going to have to make. If you're comfortable staying at 4, if you've got 3 or 4 guys are all graded the same and you want to wait it out, fine. Go ahead and do that. Like I'm not saying that the Colts absolutely should trade up, but if you are hell-bent on Stroud is my guy, go get him. Young is my guy, go get him then. Even if it's Levis, go get him at 1.
Right.
Do what you have to do. No more waiting, no more Band-Aids, no more safe playing it. Go for it.
Right.
Let's go.
I hear you.
Do you want to start good or bad from the college basketball week?
We'll start with good because we don't give enough attention to the Purdue Boilermakers, who, again, the latest polls I don't think have come out. They entered the week number 1.
Yeah.
They lost to Rutgers, but then I thought, pretty good back-to-back performances on the road that if one of those 2 polls keeps them at 1, I think it's justified, but they're just really well coached, and they continue to get really good play out of young players. I mean, Lawyer continues to play at a high level. That's a good win, Derek. Going and playing in the Palestra against Penn State.
It's a road game.
That's a good win, and winning at Ohio State was a solid win.
Penn State was a road game. I don't know if they're going to categorize it as that, but that was a road game. That was a road atmosphere. And you withstood their best half of the season and came back and just crushed them in that second half. They outscored them by 19. Fletcher Lawyer's shot at the end of the Ohio State game, I do wonder if we'll go back later in the season and look at that as maybe something that –
a turning point?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to say that back-to-back losses to good Rutgers and Ohio State teams would necessarily be like this crushing blow that Purdue couldn't bounce back from, but that felt like a massive shot to kind of stabilize things. And it's great, and we're going to talk about the team down the road here in a little bit. It's great to see a team actually overachieve and be fundamental and be well coached and have role players that know what they're doing.
They're just tough.
And you just don't – I think a lot of Purdue fans want to make it about March with Matt Painter, and I get it. I get that that's ultimately what he's judged on. But you need to be really happy with where that program is. It is such a well-run machine, especially when you look around in close vicinity to where your program is and even rival schools of your program and see what they're dealing with compared to what you have.
By the way, Derek Schultz has now been employed by Purdue University for a week, and already it's, quote, the school down the road. Just like Ohio State fans with Michigan, right? Here is the reality when it comes to Purdue basketball and Indiana. Purdue is a tougher team than Indiana. Purdue is a smarter team than Indiana, and Purdue is better coached. And all three of those things. Mike Woodson, after Indiana's loss to Northwestern at home, when asked about Indiana's defensive lapses, started talking about the injuries that have taken place. I get it. You know what? Every team has injuries.
Yep.
You can't do that. You cannot make the excuse of, well, our guys are hurt. Two of your players are hurt, and they are two key cogs. I get that. I totally get it. But that's what recruiting's all about.
Yep.
That's why the guys, the Hoosier hysterics guys are smoking cigars and putting on their candy striped pants and going to pep rallies and talking about, for every single player and, we just got this 5-star and we got this 4-star and the future's bright. Da, da, da. What that means is that your season should not go in the toilet because two guys got hurt. You have guys on your roster that everybody did backflips over, that guys waited in line to get autographs at AAU tournaments. I'm sorry, but the excuse of these guys aren't ready to play doesn't fly, because if that's the case, then don't sit there and run a parade all the way down Walnut because they committed to your program. Yeah. Tamar Bates has been there long enough now that he should be able to step in and immediately play and give you the minutes that you need to do. Malik Renault was supposed to be like Hunter Perea, a guy that, he could be a one and done. His body, he's unbelievable. As soon as he learns how to play and catch the ball, he's going to be great. All that is hogwash crap BS excuse. Start playing, get some toughness, look like you've been coached, look like you know what the hell you're supposed to do when the game's on the line, and win some games when it matters, especially on the road.
You just can't – you can get out-talented by Kansas and Arizona. You can't get out-talented by Northwestern.
Correct.
It's impossible. Indiana could lose their top 5 players, and they'd still put more talent. They put a bunch of top 50 recruits on the floor yesterday, even without – Race Thompson and Xavier Johnson, and you still lost. Like, that can't – I know Northwestern's better than they've been. That still can't happen. To me, I mean, Jake, you've been following IU basketball for a long time. There's one thing that you can't do if you're IU basketball. It's lose continually to Northwestern at home. And that's what they did. I think this also falls on Mike Woodson. The NBA is a much different game. You have to be more hands-on as a college coach. You can't just sit back and say, well, here, these are my good players. They're just going to figure it out. No, you have to – be more hands-on. Like, for Miller Kopp, you've got to run stuff for those guys. You can't just let him be out there and trust him to take care of business. And I don't feel like they do that enough. I feel like Woodson just throws his players out on the floor and, because of their talent level, expects them and trusts them to do what they're supposed to do. And these, at the end of the day, these are – I don't care how talented you are. If you're 19, you're not always going to do what you're supposed to do or even know what you're supposed to do.
Right.
So – I think this is a big turning point here for Indiana. You could throw the Big Ten title out the window.
Derek,
that's gone.
It's. I mean, we're not even halfway through January, so this is premature. Could Indiana go another year without making the tournament? I know they made it last year, but they got. If you want to call the play-in game,
could you go from essentially unanimous Big Ten title favorite to missing the tournament?
Yeah, are they going to be a bubble team?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's possible. I shouldn't say like definitively there definitely are, but I mean, you're looking, even with where they sit today, that Xavier win has aged well, right?
Correct.
They're probably on I would guess, the 8-9 line.
Yeah,
maybe a little bit lower than that.
I think I saw them recently as a 6, and that was before the Penn State or the Northwestern game.
I saw them as a 5 going into the Iowa game. And look, Iowa's not very good.
They're reducing their margin for error here.
Yeah, they are. The good news is that the Big Ten, while it's competitive, it's not a great league. It doesn't look like a great league.
Well, the Big Ten champion could have 4 losses, right?
Yeah. Well, but Indiana would have to go.
Understood. But what I'm saying is it is a league that you can probably, if you go above 500, and it's going to be tough to let you out. Keep you out, but still.
I think Indiana obviously can still be an NCAA tournament team. I think they could even still be a top half Big Ten team.
Do you have their schedule in front of you?
I think you have to throw out the Big Ten championship with where they sit today. I think you got to throw that out. I know it's January 9th or whatever.
Let me pull up
I think
their next. Give me like their next 5. Do you have the schedule in front of you?
Let me get it.
Okay. Because the question here is, I'm writing down their record. Okay.
I mean, I hate even doing this because teams can look
Understood.
a lot different.
But if you give me their next 5.
Wisconsin at home.
Okay.
At Illinois.
Hold on. Wisconsin at home, at Illinois. Okay.
Michigan State home.
Okay.
At the Barn.
Okay.
Ohio State home.
Okay, now.
And then at Maryland to round out the month.
Okay, so we'll go all of those. Gut instinct, boom. Wisconsin, win or loss?
I think they bounce back at home and win.
Okay, at Illinois.
Loss.
Michigan State at home.
Loss.
At Minnesota.
Well, you would hope a win, God, right? I'll say win.
Ohio State at home.
I'll say win again.
At Maryland.
Loss.
Okay, so right there, that puts you at 3-3. That puts them at 18-8 heading into February.
Yeah. I mean, if I had to guess, gun to my head right now, and we're very early, if I had to guess Indiana's Big Ten record, I would guess that they would go 9-9.
Put you right on the bubble.
I mean, they're 1-3 right now, so just to go 9-9, they'd have to go 8-5. They'd have to win more games than they lose, obviously. So
they got to start playing with some toughness. They have to start getting some guys that learn how to play defense, and they've got to get some form of consistent outside shooting.
Yeah.
And that part, I realize. Xavier Johnson is out. I get it, right?
The ancillary parts have to be better, for sure, and they haven't been good enough. And they have to be coached better. I mean, enough with the players and all that. We keep blaming it on the players. Sometimes it's the coach's fault. It's a shame that it's that way.
My friend Michael in Australia is FaceTiming me. Should I take it?
No, we're trying to tape the show here. Let's go positive.
Do you want me to?
We'll do like a compliment sandwich, and we'll go positive.
We could have been international right
Jake,
there.
we're on a time constraint here.
Okay.
Shout out to Indiana State. They are 6-0 in league play for the first time since Larry Bird and the 78-79 team. They're 2 games clear of everybody else in the Valley. Just a great job by ISU, and I'm excited to see what happens for the rest of the year.
I mean, listen, the start they've gotten out to in the MoVal alone, and they were not.
What were they picked to finish in leagues? You know?
Like 7th, I think.
Oh, really?
Right?
Okay, I don't even know. Yeah, I don't know what they were
high.
picked to finish in the league.
You know,
no idea.
But yes, they have played very, very well.
And also playing well, Ball State.
Boy, Michael Lewis has got them rolling, man.
Let's talk about the Cardinals. Chirp, chirp. 7 straight dubs for Michael Lewis and the men. They did an Ohio 2-step through Toledo
11-4 now?
and Akron. They are 11-4, 2-0 in MAC play. Also undefeated in MAC play and on a win streak. The women, they're 12-3, 2-0. They beat Bowling Green and Western Michigan last week. Get this, you could see both of them at the same time. Not playing simultaneously, obviously, but a doubleheader.
Right.
Men's and women's doubleheader coming up Saturday, Worthen Arena, 888 BSU ticket, ballstatesports.com. Men tip at noon, women tip at 2.
Worthen Arena, by the way, super cool, right? Just like a perfect. It looks brand new. It was built when I was in college, and it looks brand new. And again, if you live in Indy, you live on the north side. I know a lot of our listeners and viewers live probably up near where I grew up. I mean, 50 minutes maybe.
Yeah. From Midtown, it was an hour flat from Midtown.
I mean, from nobody says Midtown.
Midtown to Muncie.
You live on the south side of Indianapolis. Okay, hour and 15 minutes, hour and 20 minutes, right? Go up there. There's plenty of good places to eat in Muncie. Maybe go to Roots, get yourself a burger, go watch the game. A lot of fun.
Yeah, or you can eat lunch in Midtown and have that be a stop if you're coming from the south side, and then it's an hour flat from Midtown to Muncie. So you can do that. 888 BSU ticket.
Midtown, just north side.
Ballstatesports.com. It's not north side. It's the middle of town. Midtown. Hence Midtown. Pacers keep cooking.
That's right.
I'm like running out of superlatives for the Pacers. I mean, what a
impressive.
season. How about this for a stat? You ready? Pacers would have to lose out. They'd have to go 0-41 to not hit the over on their preseason Vegas win total. They have 23 wins. Their win total for the season was 23.5. So they're exactly at the halfway point now. They're 41 games through. They would have to go 0-41 to hit the under, which obviously is not going to happen.
That guy right there is a huge key to that, man. Tyrese Halliburton, I watched yesterday when I was at the game. They were playing the Hornets. and just his ability his athleticism, his lob ability, his ability to get, a lot of guys, Derek, when they are penetrating towards the basket, they get kind of too in deep, and they get kind of stuck. He's seemingly he's like the guy that at the very last second you're wondering if he's going to get stopped in traffic, and he just finds a way to merge in. Yeah. That's exactly what he's like when he is moving the basket and keeping the ball in operating areas offensively and creating. I mean, he is a really good player.
They've unlocked Miles Turner, who's consistently been really good. I mean, every night now it feels like you're getting it from Miles, and it looks like a really well put together roster, doesn't it? With the skills and how they've meshed together and individually and the talent. It's just a pleasure to watch, and the timing couldn't be better. Coming off this disastrous Colts season, it's been great to have the Pacers and to be shocked about how good they've been and how
Miles
competitive
Turner,
they've been.
Derek, apparently turned down the first contract extension offer. Will they come to terms with him? I think they need to.
Yeah, I think at this point they're going to do everything they can, but if they can't, they've got to trade him. So that's the bottom line.
I think you just keep this core together, man.
No, you don't do it to be the 6th seed in the East. As fun of a season as this is, and as great as a story as this is, you still have to have 24, 25, of that in the back of your mind.
Understood. But what I'm saying to you is Tyrese Halliburton, Benedict Mathurin, Aaron Nesmith,
yep,
Andrew Nimhard, Jalen Smith. All those guys are under the age of, 25, right?
Yeah.
They are playing so well right now that I think you just allow that group to continue to grow together. And two of the important pieces that allowed that group to really mesh are Buddy Hield and Miles Turner. And if those guys want to be here and you're able to lock them in, you just grow. You just
no, you got to. What I'm saying is, if you go to the negotiating table with Miles Turner and you do everything in your power, it's a two-way street. Miles Turner still has to say yes. If he continually says no and you can't come to terms with him,
I agree that
you have to deal him.
But by a certain time, you're right. You're right.
So you can't afford to lose him for nothing at the end of the year.
But your first priority should be to retain him.
Yes, I agree. I think, and it's crazy that we're saying that. In August, you would have been laughed out of the room if you said the first priority for the Pacers should be extending. No one felt that way. Felt like it was inevitable that these two were heading for divorce. Did you? No, you're a big hindsight guy. You kind of hide your opinions and then you say, oh, yeah, I said this. And then you go back in the podcast and you're like, wait a minute, Jake didn't say this at all. It's ridiculous. We'll come back.
If only there was a place of a radio show that has a website that archives audio where we could fact check that.
Yeah, you can check out our Spreaker page, I guess. QuarryandSchultz.com if you want to go back in the archives. We still have our Sage Move and Barter Bobley.
All right.
Chateau Kitchens to get to wrap up episode 118. Quarry and Schultz, ISC Sports Network.
Nice snap.
Mortgages and a snap. Duh.
Bailey and Wood, a lending hand for Wish TV Sports.
Hey, I'm Jeff Saturday, and my favorite thing when I was a professional football player was Indiana. The Hoosier State always made me feel like family. That's why I trust Indiana's hometown mortgage lender, Bailey & Wood. This family-owned company not only gives back to the communities they serve, but also with their 5-star customer service, they can close on your dream home in days, not weeks. So remember, Indiana, you can always get your mortgages at a snap with Bailey & Wood.
Hey, Jeff, how does this look? Yay!
Not bad, bud, but let's stick to mortgages.
Nice snap.
Mortgages and a snap. Duh.
Bailey and Wood, a lending hand for Wish TV Sports.
Back for a final time. It's Quarry and Schultz, presented by Bailey and Wood Financial Group. Let's get to our friends at WGU Indiana and our Sage Move of the Week.
WGU Indiana is Indiana's largest online accredited university. And if you are one of the 700,000 Hoosiers that has college credits sitting on a shelf right now that you thought expired, or you thought, it's just not in the cards for me to finish my degree, guess what? you're wrong. I actually have been taking classes online. I've enjoyed it for the last year. I am just a couple of months from completing the degree that I thought actually was just something I would never get back to. And then it was like jumping into a pool. Once I jumped in, got used to the water temperature, all smooth from there. Confident you can do the same with WGU Indiana. Again, WGU has a wide array of programs for you, whether you are going back to finish your degree or thinking about for the very first time starting a degree. The beauty of WGU is it has all of those programs available online so you can work at your schedule because ambition never rests. That's wgu.edu/Indiana.
My stage move of the week is one that hasn't necessarily happened yet, but I can't think in the history of the draft, I can't think of a more advantageous position to be in than where the Bears are right now. They could literally trade down twice, still get the guy that they wanted all along, and have a treasure trove of draft picks to rebuild this team. They could even trade Fields if they really wanted to. I mean, I don't know if they're going to do that, but that's on the table for them. Aren't you kind of surprised with as bad as they've been historically as a franchise that this is the first time the Bears will be selecting first since 1947?
That is surprising.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, totally.
You would think that, one of those years they would have been bad enough to get the number one pick, but I think the Bears, I'm sure Mark Dykton was super geeked this morning and all bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. They're in a very, it's a really good place to be.
Yeah, it is. And I would anticipate the Bears trade out.
Yeah, me too. But they can kind of pit Houston and Indy against each other.
You're right.
Which will be interesting to see. Thanks to our friends at WGU for obviously being great partners of ours, and Corey for being a good sport. I gave him the TCU Texas clip from last week. I was kind of busting his chops a little bit, but Corey's a great dude. Also, great dudes and gals at Chateau Kitchens, and we'll wrap up with our buy it or bowl bleep. ChateauKitchens.com, at Chateau Kitchens, Instagram and Facebook for before and after pictures. They're in my house actually right now.
Right there. There we go.
About to finish my basement, which is going to be beautiful. We'll share some of the pictures on here.
Phone over there. There we go.
Kind of like me walking out of the shower. I'll walk out of my basement with just a towel on if you want. We can do that. Chateau Kitchens has done great work for me. They're going to do great work for you. Give them a shout today. First statement, Jake. Colts will be the next worst to first team next season. Buy it or bowl bleep?
No chance.
No chance?
No, because Jacksonville, if they're healthy, is going to win the division.
Jacksonville needs to sustain it for me.
Trevor Lawrence has arrived.
Jacksonville needs to sustain it for me. It's a good 6 weeks, 8 weeks for Trevor Lawrence. The AFC South is more apt to allowing a worse for first. Like if the Colts were in the AFC West right now, I would not say that there was even a possibility of that. But you know what? Just to be contrarian, because we've snarked on them all year long, I'll say sure. Colts will be worst to first next season. Colts will win the AFC South at 9-8 with a rookie quarterback and a new head coach.
They do have have you seen their schedule? NFC South.
Yeah, but Jake,
Atlanta,
we always say that.
New Orleans, Tampa.
Seattle was supposed to stink.
You're right.
Detroit was supposed to stink. Like a lot of these teams that are supposed to stink end up being pretty good.
Partially because they have terrible schedule.
Well, statement 2, you're not wrong there. No teams playing Wild Card Weekend will make the Super Bowl. Buy it or bowl bleep?
The Super Bowl is Buffalo playing this weekend?
Problem is that with Wild Card Weekend, now you're only taking out the 1 seeds.
Yeah,
right?
No, yes.
So it would have to be.
Yes, the Super Bowl. There will be a Super Bowl participant playing this weekend.
Kansas City as the one in the AFC, and Philly as the one in the NFC.
The
right?
Super Bowl is going to be Buffalo and Dallas.
Buffalo, Dallas, huh? I still think we're underselling Kansas City.
Yeah,
I know Kansas City hasn't particularly played well against Buffalo and Cincinnati.
Can you imagine? I mentioned this a couple times.
I think the Niners are coming out of the NFC.
Can you imagine? That's also
I think the Niners are coming out.
That's entirely possible. My Australians wanted to know, by the way. You ready, Derek? Real quick. Yeah. He just sent me a text. He said, we have a dilemma. He's in the United States, the Australians. He said, do we go to the national championship game, Georgia-TCU, tonight, or wait and go to Niners-Seahawks at the end of the week?
Ooh. I'd rather be in Seattle than L.A.
Well, is that game in Seattle?
Oh, I guess the Niners would be hosting, right?
Yeah, the Niners are hosting.
I think I'd rather be in San Francisco. Maybe I'd rather be in San Francisco. I don't know. San Francisco, whatever.
But it's in Santa Clara.
Yeah, I guess you're right. It's in Santa Clara. Yeah. I don't know the answer to that. That's a good question. Can we do statement 3 here real quick? IU will miss the NCAA tournament, buy it or bowl bleep?
Both Schultz.
Yeah,
they'll get in, but they'll be a bubble team.
I'm not ready to go there.
They'll get in, Derek. They'll get in as like a 10 seed and play San Diego State.
Even with a banged up Trace Jackson Davis, and if Hood Schifino keeps playing at a high level, that should be good enough to at the very least.
I have no idea if San Diego State's any good. By the way, they might be like under 500. I have no idea.
Thanks to our great sponsors: Lou Malnati's, Bailey and Wood Financial Group,
Chateau
Ball State
Kitchens.
Sports, Chateau Kitchens,
Love heating and air conditioning.
WGU Indiana. Thanks to Rake, Vince, JD, everybody here at ISC. We will see you next time here on Query and Schultz, ISC Sports Network.
Throw it up for Tillman. Whoa, my goodness. 122.60 for Penn.
What a swim! Six of them.